All right. And to introduce the members of the committee, we'll start from my far left. We have Representative Leila Staffler, Chair for Education, Representative Selena Babalta, Chair for JGO, Representative Sheila Babalta, Chair for Natural Resources, Representative Christina Sablan, Chair for Health and Welfare, Representative Edwin Probst, Chair for Gaming. Joining me up in the dais is Vice Chair, Representative Karina Magofnia. I am Donald Malonia, Chair for Ways and Means. And then to my far right is Representative Richard Lizama, Chair for PUTC. Representative Danita Yanktamay, Chair for Commerce and Tourism and Cannabis. And Representative Vicente Camacho, Chair for Federal and Foreign Affairs. All right, good afternoon, members. Before us, we have the budget hearing for Departmental Public Safety. And before we proceed, can I get a motion on the adoption of today's agenda? Motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The floor is open for public comments. If there's any members in the audience that would like to provide any comments. If there's none, we now move on to the introduction. As I stated, today we have the Department of Public Safety up for its budget hearing. And if you look at the budget submission, there are 4 divisions. We have the Commissioner, we have the DPS Police, Administration, and Motor Vehicle. The department submitted a budget request of $9.9 million for the upcoming fiscal year, whereas 7.9 is allocated for personnel and 1.6 in operations. Based on the governor's proposed spending plan, ARPA and General Fund was allocated to the Department of Public Safety for $6.9 million, which computes a shortfall of $3,081,000. And so I understand there was a conflict in scheduling with the commissioner, and so he is here today to answer questions that the members may have. Moving forward, my apologies to the members, but I will hand the floor over to the vice chair to take lead in the remaining portion of the hearing. I'll be standing by just for the members' safety and well-being. Sorry. With that, we'll allow the commissioner and his team to make their way into the chamber.
Okay. Good afternoon, DPS Commissioner Guerrero. Thank you again, and to your team for coming in this afternoon. Would you like to give any opening remarks at this time?
Yes, Madam Vice Chair. First, I want to apologize for the conflict of scheduling conflict on Tuesday. Rest assured, there's no disrespect in any way to the committee and to the chairman and you, Madam Chair, or Vice Chair. But as I reiterate to the chairman, I will be here today, and we're here with Director of Administration, Director of Motor Vehicle, and my Human Resources Officer. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Although we've submitted a budget to the governor's office with that amount, we are cognizant of the need of other department as well. And we've been assured that any cut in our requests, the governor's office and the Secretary of Finance will work with us in addressing that. So with that said, we are in full support of the governor's submission. And again, thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening statement. And before I open up the floor for the rest of the members to ask their questions, I would like to start off by asking if you could help this committee understand what your goals and objectives are and the needs as a commissioner for the upcoming fiscal year.
So the department's plan for the upcoming year, as we've had for the last year, a couple of years back, is actually to increase police presence in the community, which in turn relates to reduction in crime rates, reduction in drug activities. So far, we reached our numbers as far as personnel on the law enforcement side and managed to reestablish the drug enforcement task force to tackle our drug issues. If you notice, a lot of our uh, our drug activities have gone down tremendously, and that's because of a lot of police presence and a lot of the officers are more equipped with equipment that they may need out on the field to do their work.
Thank you for that. Based on based on information that you provided for your goals and objectives in the upcoming fiscal year, what would you say your priorities that you deem to be critical and essential for your department to run its operations adequately and to provide the necessary services to our community? And if you could list them in priority as your most important to your least.
Well, first and foremost, actually take care of the officers, and we've done that as far as equipment and supplies. Overtime is also a big issue. As you've noticed, our overtime has ballooned in the last 2 years. Keep in mind, and that overtime is actually paid by COVID. Once we we're actually submitting reimbursement on a timely basis as far as the overtime costs, which COVID will cover the cost of all the overtime with exception of those that are non-COVID related, which is very minimal. So those are the basic needs, aside from the ammunition needs and the fuel. But again, Secretary of Finance has been working with us very closely as far as addressing that and meeting our needs.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll open the floor for the members to ask their questions. I recognize Representative Probst.
Uh, Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioner and your team. Thank you for coming in today. Commissioner, you had mentioned the priority of taking care of the police officers. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions with regard to that. I have received some complaints from police officers who, of course, wish to remain anonymous, but have met with me and have even spoken to me about and showed me some of their equipment that they have, even photos of it. One of the things that they talked about was their belt. They explained to it how it was, I guess, made in China or really cheap material. And some of them had to go ahead and use their own money to purchase US made or a better brand. With that was one concern. And then I have also spoken to them about the with regard to having to pay for uniforms damage or replacement of uniforms. Is there money that is going to be used to buy them the best equipment for these police officers? Also, what is the current rule with regard to the uniform? If they need a new uniform, is it out of pocket from them or does the department pay for it? Thank you.
Congressman, first thing with the equipment that they have now, that was bidded out. And, we go through the procurement process. I don't have the luxury of saying I want 511s or I want strikers. If I bid out, I just got to give them the specification. And unfortunately, a lot of this stuff the specs are met with the China-made stuff. So when we bid it out, I really don't have much say so if a company beats another company out. So that's the story behind it. But officers nowadays, when they come about and say, we need this, we need that, logistics automatically goes out and gets it for them. Same way with the uniform. Uniform is a one-to-one basis. You go out there and your uniform is stored. As a matter of fact, we just ordered, add them, get 3 additional uniforms per officer. And I believe they've got that already. No? They've got that already. So that's in the works. And I don't believe in officers paying for their own stuff. Again, with the procurement process, sometimes my hands are tight. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And yes, I do understand in procurement there's often, but is there specific standards that are put into place? Because I saw one of the belts that said, it even said police using something like that. It was not even in correct grammar. But, and I could feel the material was obviously not very, standard, sturdy. So my question is, for procurement purposes, couldn't standards be put in, made in the U.S. only, or something to that effect? Thank you.
Unfortunately, we've tried that. We even tried the issue with the vehicles, as far as make sure that they're the Made in America Act, but some of those stuff don't apply to us. And I've been told that I cannot be very specific enough where I'm targeting a particular brand, as much as we want our officers to be wearing, like I said, 511 equipment. But we are still trying to work around, and if officers come to us saying we need this, my asp is broken, we automatically tell them to go out and see if we can get apps for unfortunately, a lot of these stuff are not readily available on island. They have to be ordered.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Representative Sprobe. I have a follow-up question. So in instances where employee or your staff had to go out and pay for stuff out of their own pocket, are they allowed to submit requests for reimbursements?
They are. Unfortunately, they don't. A lot of these officers kind of compete per se, and they don't. They go out and buy their stuff. They don't come back to us, or they'll come. And I hear this from the officers that they say, I bought this here, I bought that there. But if they do submit their reimbursement, we will honor that. And just recently, we spoke with Secretary of Finance, not particular for our department, but he was discussing for another department, and he said it's doable.
Is there a SOP, a standard operating procedure, or a protocol that your department has, where in instances like that there's a process that they follow?
Well, we hold our commanders accountable for their officers. We've had instances where, for example, road guard vest. I don't hear that we're short of road guard vests, but when for some reason I visit some of the sites and officers come up to me or an accident, and I say, how come you're not wearing a road guard vest? Well, we don't have any. So I turn to the commander and say, how come this guy doesn't have road guard vest? So it's actually the commander that oversees people, do inspections during briefings. And right now we're pressing the commanders to make sure that they check their people, take care of the welfare of their people and their family.
Thank you for that. Any other members? Recognize Representative Ben Camacho.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Welcome. You said something about taking care of the officers would be the priorities, right? He was just talking about equipment. You're a veteran, aren't you? Well, the military sets a very high standard. And as commissioner, you should not be questioning what equipment you bring for them. I would use that military standard to actually make your force even better. Yeah. So I would suggest that you speak up, use your military standards, get them equipment. I would do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Representative Camacho. Anybody else? Recognize Representative Tina Sablan, and then after Representative Staffler.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and welcome, Commissioner, and welcome, Directors. Thank you for being here today. Maybe we could start with the status of the desk audit that was directed in the current budget for OPM to work with Department of Public Safety to complete that review. Could you give us an update on where we are with that and if that study informed your budget submission at all?
I haven't seen the audit itself. My understanding was OPM is actually finalizing that for, I guess it was given a deadline of July.
March.
Uh,
March,
or
actually.
okay, I don't. Yeah, that's. I don't know what the discussion with OPM and the committee.
Mhm.
I know they've come around and did audits on all the employees, even as late as what 2 weeks ago. No, is there? As late as 2 weeks ago that they were still doing paperwork.
Okay.
I didn't get involved in any of it. I
Okay.
left that up to OPM and HR to scheduling when the officers are going to come, or the employees, not just the officers. The employees are going to come in.
Mhm.
So I was advised that they're going to turn it in. They're in the midst of finalizing it, and that's all I can. I
Okay.
think that should be addressed to OPM.
Sure, but as far as DPS is concerned, like you're still participating in the review. It's not, your part isn't done yet.
I haven't reviewed any documents.
Okay.
It's just between the employees and OPM.
Mhm.
For
Okay.
now, I'm not sure if that's supposed to come back to me for review or not. I haven't
Right.
been informed of any.
Okay, thank you. And this question came up, I guess it's more of a general question about the department's position that it is in agreement with the governor's proposal. The governor proposed 0 for operations. W- How could you be in agreement with that?
That's one the reason we agree. One is we have a revolving account that we lean on.
Mhm.
Fortunately, that doesn't cover everything.
Right.
And the reason I went in agreement with the submission because I got the assurance, as I have for the last 3 years, that any shortfall or immediate need that DPS has will be addressed by the administration and the Secretary of Finance. And any needs, for example, i.e., fuel,
Mhm.
our fuel is always low.
Right.
I mean, funding wise, I work with him to assist us in any way. I don't know where he gets the funding for it,
Okay.
but we do bring it to his attention,
Right.
just as any other needs that we may have, i.e., ammunition,
Mhm.
the
Right.
immediate needs.
And similar to like overtime, you mentioned overtime being important to DPS and a significant expenditure, and you proposed 200,000, and the governor proposed 0. So same with that. You have his assurance, the governor's assurance that they'll find the money to meet DPS's needs.
The overtime is a bit different. That's what we're relying on the COVID money that comes in for that. And that we submit directly to FEMA for reimbursement.
Mhm. Will that still be the case? Do you expect in FY 2023? You'll rely on COVID money to cover that?
Yes, because we submit the COVID reimbursement directly. It doesn't go to Secretary of Finance or to the administration.
Mhm.
We do have a team that actually does compute payroll, expenses related to COVID,
Mhm.
vehicle usage, cost, and we submit that directly to FEMA. And in turn, FEMA reimburses us for all those costs.
I see. And what COVID-related activities are you projecting for fiscal year 2023?
Wherever the task force remains in place. In this place, I think we're still enforcing the maximum in facilities.
The occupancy,
Yeah.
that one? Okay.
So basically distancing per se.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't get you more information on that. And submit to the office. But so far, we're still using COVID money for reimbursement as far as overtime is concerned. That's COVID related.
Okay. So even now, your officers are still enforcing the social distancing and the occupancy limitations?
I believe so, yes. But I can get back to you too for more clarification on that.
Okay. Yeah, because if that's not the case, and if there aren't actually COVID-related activities, we wouldn't want the government to be in a position to have to pay these things back or to just absorb the cost without getting
Yes.
reimbursement, right?
I understand.
Thank you. And then you mentioned fuel, and I was startled by what you proposed for this fiscal year, $600,000 for fuel, which is more than 5 times what you actually spent in 2020 and double what you spent in 2021. What accounts for this huge jump in fuel projections, fuel
If you know-
expenditures?
Okay, sorry. If you notice, we just more police cars has come in
Mhm.
that were funded either by ARPA or FEMA from previous reimbursements. So we've added close to 75 new vehicles to the department.
75. Wow.
Yes.
How many have you taken offline though?
We basically take whatever we take off offline, we replace it. Basically, whatever we bring in, we replace. We take offline the old cars,
Okay.
and those cars are either given to other departments or either serve it out to procurement.
Okay. So you're breaking even then, right? If you're
Well, the cars we have now are a little bit bigger
okay.
compared to the Tucsons and the Rogue that we had prior.
So they use more fuel.
They use more fuel. Yes.
Are they like V6 or V8 engines?
They're V8s. They're actually police package vehicles. So they're specialized vehicles strictly for law enforcement.
So they okay. And you, what is your fuel consumption like now then? Because those new vehicles are already. You're not
We're-
projecting to buy more vehicles in the next year, right?
No,
Okay.
that should hold us at least for the next 3 to 4 years.
Mhm.
Um,
So every month, what are your fuel expenditures like now?
Between 50 to 60,000.
Oh wow.
But that's not just vehicles. That includes boats and.
Oh okay.
Yes.
So, and again, not to beat a dead horse, Commissioner, but the governor proposed 0 for fuel also. Same thing with that. He reassured you that he will cover somehow your $50,000 to $60,000 fuel bill.
Yes,
Every
and
month?
I often remind the Secretary of Finance that our fuel bills just came in,
Mhm.
and the cost is the same, but
Right.
help us and it does get paid. We haven't had a period in the last 7 years that our fuel has been suspended for non-payment.
Okay. Are you current with your fuel bill now?
My understanding, yes.
Wow. Okay. And then going back to the revolving funds, Ms. Enos mentioned the guard services account. Where do those fees come from? What are guard services?
Okay, what had happened in 2018 after U2, FEMA required armed security service for the Cobreville supply point. Their office at TSL. Prior to that, their office up here at retirement. So we were getting paid for that,
Okay.
and altogether, how much did we make on that one? It was about $47 per officer per hour.
Okay.
And we're averaging like 3 or 4, depending on the sites. And then we get reimbursed for that. It goes to a special account, a
Mhm.
revolving account.
Mhm.
And that's why we lean on that a lot for a lot of our expenses.
Okay. So that funding then is winding down. You're not
Yes.
incurring or you're not receiving any more
No.
fees for that. Okay. And then does DPS, what happens to like the indirect costs or administrative costs for the federal grants that you receive? And what does that amount to?
I believe the indirect cost goes to the grants office, if I'm not mistaken.
The CNMI grants office?
Yes.
So you don't receive any of that?
For the indirect costs?
Mhm.
No.
Okay. Do you know what that amounts to?
If we're paying for our utilities, it's 11%. If we don't, it's 30-some%.
Okay.
I can provide you that information and later tells us which account is. But I believe we're paying for all of our utility bills from the grant itself
Mhm.
that's given.
Okay, and 100% of those costs or indirect costs don't go
No.
to DPS.
No.
Okay. I yield for now, Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Saban. Rep. Staffler.
Thank you, Chairwoman, Vice Chairwoman, and welcome, Commissioner and team. Welcome back, team. I thank you for coming in. And just looking through, I was curious about, I mean, you've already mentioned that the governor said that he will cover all expenses that are missing. So I just wanted to make sure that it's also noted that the 401k contributions were not included in the department request or the governor's request. Is there, did people pull out?
Yeah, give me a minute there, Congresswoman. Normally personnel per se, we don't touch as far as when we do submission, it's basically from the previous year.
There might have been an omission, inadvertent, and so I would definitely check on that just to make sure that it's in part of your record as well, because it's not in the governor's, but it's also not in your side. And in particular, the 1350 account has maybe the largest group of people who would want their 401ks funded, and so make sure we put it back in.
Okay, we'll look into that.
Thank you. I remember when Ms. Kay was sharing with us last time that training is something that's important, but it's also something that's not reflected in the budget, nor is it funded by the governor's submission either. But if you have an opportunity for training, what kind of training is urgent and needed for the department at this time?
Most of the training that we actually have to incur, if any, is just recertification of our firearms. All the other programs are basically funded by the grant itself, and that's included in the budget for every grant that they've submitted. I'm not going to say we've been lucky that we haven't spent anything for travel the last 2 years because of COVID, but we were to the point that we told our program managers to reprogram the money elsewhere where it can be used for the particular program. But yes, there are funds in the particular grant to fund the travel.
Okay, so the training is part of the grant more than your local general budget then?
The train,
The
yes,
training
yes,
is like training is funded by grants?
yes.
Okay. And that's why it's not reflected
Yes.
here. Understood. Thank you for that. That's very good information. I yield for now, Chairwoman. Thank you.
Good afternoon, again, Commissioner. The question I have is in regards to your officers, and have most of them already been promoted to the next level, or do you have a good amount of officers that are waiting to be promoted?
Sir, in 2019, I'm sorry, correction. 2016, we did the first reallocation across the board because of the years of service that they've been there. We've done 3 reallocations since 2016, and we work closely with OPM with that as far as who's qualified and who's not qualified. We do still have some that just hit the 3-year mark from PO1 to PO2 that we're looking into the matter now as far as addressing that, and also a few WGIs that we're waiting to be released that's been processed, waiting to be released at OMB.
There's no one that has been waiting years.
No,
You're pretty much up to date as far as those that are
no,
promotable.
there's none. Well, maybe say there's probably a couple, and I can discuss that on a sideline. I don't want to discuss that publicly as far as the issue with any particular officers, why they haven't got promoted. So,
Okay. I noticed that you're requesting for additional 7 FTEs.
we were those originally were for the furlough employees, but they were carried by ARPA. My understanding was the OMB was taking that out because ARPA was going to cover that expense.
Yeah. So you do have those 7, but they're funded through.
To ARPA, yes.
Okay. And just one more. I think this is for Ms. Juana. The real ID, what's the situation on Rhoda and Tinian?
Okay, I'll
Or
answer that if you don't mind.
Commissioner, yeah.
Real ID is a little bit different, and I think a lot of people don't understand. Real ID is actually certified by U.S. Homeland Security. TNEP, for example, had to undergo background checks for the operators. And I believe, yeah, we have to address a lot of security issues for the Real ID. Rhoda, Rhoda as well with the facility. Originally, it was supposed to be installed at the old DPS building. They moved up to the courthouse. We had to go back to the main building. So we're trying to work that out as we speak right now with as far as there's already funding for those purposes. A contract, they're including the regional contract for that.
Do you know when the completion date would be for Rhoda, and then when would the certification be complete for Tinian?
I believe Rhoda particularly, we have to bring down the vendor again to reevaluate the per se new facility that's going to be reestablished. But I can get an update from our IT on that, Congressman. I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Just a side note, I don't know if there's something wrong with your system, but for some reason TSA can't scan the real ID, so I don't know if that's something that needs to be looked at also. But
Okay, we'll address that. Because I understand it's agencies involved is CBP for Homeland Security, U.S. Passport, the Hospital Statistic Office. Those are the three that, and it's a more sensitive system because the minute that we input some, for example, Social Security is required, if Social Security number is not available, the application process will stop there. It will not allow us to override it. So I can't find out if my understanding TSA was not involved since the beginning.
yeah,
In this portion, but I'll find
for
out
most
more.
cases, when they run it through their machines, whether it be at car rental agencies or
Uh-huh.
airports, it doesn't seem to read off the
Okay.
barcode. But
I'll
that's
look into
something
it,
that, yeah. I have one more, but I'll yield for now if any other member have any question.
Recognize Rep. Ben Camacho and then Rep. Sheila Babauta.
Thank you, Vice. Commissioner, earlier you said that you had received 75 new vehicles from FEMA.
We procured 75 vehicles from different funding source, but we have not received all 75 as of yet.
Okay.
They were lacking the K9 unit, 9 units for the K9.
Okay. So that not complete yet. How many total vehicles are in the DPS inventory? They're at least active now.
Congressman, can I get back to you on that number?
Sure.
We had a regional number, but I don't think it included all the other the new vehicles that came in.
So let me just ask the follow-up question, then you'll have those. And from that question, how many are locally funded and how many are federally funded? And to follow that to a third question is, are DPS vehicles required to be insured? I'm not quite sure about how that works. I didn't do research on that, but you might know.
Okay, your first question was how many of it was purchased locally and federally?
Yes.
Okay, there's none that was funded under the budget.
Okay.
Local budget. Hope that answered that question.
Okay.
I hope that answered that question. Now, your question was why are they insured, or why, or is that what the last question?
Are your vehicles required to be insured?
My understanding was government is self-insured.
Okay. Then last question. You know, you and I both know we're veterans, and we know how the military works, but we already covered the equipment. But here's my concern. Is there an SOP out there that states otherwise, that only one police officer in a vehicle? It's rare that I see two. Is that a standard? It's just that how it works.
It depends on the shift, if there's enough police officers to go on, to pair up. Ideally, they do pair up, most especially in the evening on the, when crimes are most vulnerable. And if we do that also, it limits a lot of units out in the field because they're going to be pairing up.
Yeah, reason I brought that up because I have to say DPS is not an easy job. It's actually a very dangerous job. And just as the military, when you are off to do something, you always go in pairs.
Yes.
That is what I'd like to see. I believe the officers need that buddy system.
But keep in mind though that when officers respond, most especially during domestic activities, officers don't respond individually. It's multiple units that respond, and you've seen it in Garapan on bar brawls. That 7 police car just responding to one person that was fighting. So they communicate among themselves, and the commanders. There's a field sergeant, field supervisor, which is a lieutenant, and then the captain as the shift commander. So whenever an incident occurs, and I've actually physically seen it when I do go out with them every now and then, that they all respond simultaneously. But ideally, it would be nice if I can pair them up, yes.
Oh, yeah, we should work on that. I really believe the safety of the officers is very important. Yeah, so, all right, thank you for that.
Thank you, Rep. Ben. I believe it was Rep. Sheila Babauta and then Rep. Lizama.
Thank you, Vice Chair and Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here and for bringing your team. My question is in regards to processes in the department, because there is a huge difference with the department's budget request and the governor's proposal. We see things like travel, 70,000, zero. This is under DPS police. We see computer systems and equipment, $10,000 request, now zero. Office equipment, 6,000, there's zero. Fuel and lubricant that Rep. Sablan mentioned, 600,000, now zero. Supplies for operation, 162,000 request, now zero. Repair and maintenance, $100,000 request, now zero. We also see DPS admin division, the wages and salaries, 420,000 request, down to 288. I can go on with the reduction. So how do you request funding and assistance from the governor and Department of Finance? Can you walk us through how that happens? Is it done in writing? How do you prioritize what you fund? And how do you also decide on what officer gets what? What is your process for requesting the governor for assistance? Because it seems like, this is a $3 million reduction in the department's request. And in my mind, it seems chaotic for the rest of the year for you to request for different things at different times, go to the governor or the Department of Finance, different times for different requests, scrambling for funds from all your revolving funds. It's very chaotic in an already chaotic department where you're responsible for responding, right? Protecting and serving our community. We want to stabilize it as much as possible. And so if we have a reduction in about $3 million, what is your process? Do you just give the governor a call?
No. Actually, if a lot of the funding that we do submit for, and I don't know how the munis works, and I'm assuming a lot of stuff are ARPA money, are in munis. It's showing up in munis. So when we cut a PR and it's input into the system, sometimes if it rejects, I call Secretary of Finance because I don't know if you're familiar with munis, but it may show at finance, but it doesn't show at OMB. And it shows on our end. Um, and with that, that's when, I even questioned the Secretary of Finance with that, and he said, just send it to us, just submit your request for payment. So far, like I said, everything that we requested, the needed stuff, if it's not covered by the grant itself, then we use either the local accounts that's on the system.
So your process is to just submit the request
It's all through Munis.
through Munis and just
Yep.
hope it gets approved. And if it's rejected, to call the Secretary of
If there's-
Finance.
If it's rejected, then I get involved and try to find out what needs to be, what the issues are.
Okay. That is not a good process, just for the record. That
We-
is not how a department should be run, especially a department that is largely indigenous. These are our brothers and sisters. They're mostly local, right? And you're enforcing the law. So processes are very important,
Yes.
and it sounds very chaotic. I wouldn't want to add an additional layer of chaos to the police officers who already lack the support
Well,
and the equipment.
I agree with you with what you're saying, but rest assured, this whole 2-3 years, whatever the officers need, we make it a point that we get it
How do you receive feedback from your officers?
from the
Because it
commanders.
seems like they are coming to a lot of their leaders with feedback on their supplies, equipment, how much money they spend out of pocket when they are already being paid very low wages. How do you receive feedback from your officers?
Well, I've always told my commanders, I have no problem officers or employees coming to you guys telling you the issues. But I asked you also if you hear that this, if these all, I don't even need to know names. That your officers are saying that they don't have enough equipment. Can you look into this? I'll look into it. The commanders are supposed to come back to me and tell me, I need more equipment I need more radios. We just purchased 80 radios. We need more radios for our officers. And that's when we go out and look. We don't prioritize as far as John, you're gonna get a radio. Joe, hold off. You're not a priority. We don't. It's the commanders, and our priority right now is the front line. That's out there on the street. Not to say that the criminal investigation is not priority, or the response team is not a priority. But we treat everybody the same as far as what the needs are based on the commander's requests.
So then the process is for the police officers to go to their commanders, and then the commanders to report to you.
Yes,
Do you actively seek that out, like every quarter or, twice a year? Do you sit down with your commanders and just talk
we
about
do
the
have
feedback?
command staff at least once a month, if not more. And the two directors sit in that meetings when we
Mhm.
have command staff, and I do ask them, you guys have any issues out there? What do you guys need?
Yeah.
Sir, we're good to go. And then when I go out there,
Mhm.
and for some reason, officers get comfortable to talk to me, that's when I hear, oh, we don't have a road guard vest. I was criticized the other day that I think they've given me 5 flashlights. But every time an officer comes up and they don't have a flashlight, I give them my flashlight.
Mhm. So how are you measuring performance and review? Do you conduct a performance review?
There is an annual evaluation on every civil service employee. All of our employees are civil employees, with the exception of one, no? With one, which is a counselor. Everybody else is civil service, and civil service has its own evaluation.
From
Process,
OPM or
yes.
from you?
No, from OPM.
Do you conduct performance reviews?
I do performance review on the directors. Keep in mind, DPS is a paramilitary.
Yes,
Unit?
paramilitary. Yep.
So there's a chain of command that goes up. So a shift or field sergeant will evaluate his people, and he goes up the chain.
How about physical performance reviews? So that we are reassured that our officers are in physical fitness to meet the demands of responding in our community.
Incidentally, it was just this morning that I had that conversation with our counselor. DPS has its own outdoor gym, as you've probably heard.
have
I've
seen.
I've given commanders the leeway of having an hour per day commander's time.
Yeah.
That they can adjust their need, and that's where they're supposed to train their people. Um, we were just talking about this morning that, like Guam, they have a statutory standard that requires that. And those are things that we need to work on, but we're going to work with OPM because it's a little bit more sensitive when it comes to civil service employees. So we're looking into that matter.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And yes, I have seen the gym, and I commend your office for creating that for your department, because physical fitness is important, and it is a fully stocked gym. It's very nice. It's accessible, and and you take care of that cost for the officers by providing it for them on location. So you've mentioned counselor a couple of times. Is this mental health and wellness counselor?
Yes.
And you only have one?
Yes.
And is this counselor available to all,
Employees.
just your department? It's just for DPS?
Yes, but we sometimes, if the need arises, or we have multiple cases, we also share a counselor with DOC. DOC has their own counselor as well. So we work closely with the DOC counselor.
And so is that sufficient?
Yes.
So
I
you
believe
have
so.
one counselor at DPS and two at
One at DOC.
one and DOC.
I believe
And
one.
these two counselors are responsible for
Well, DOC counselors responsible for DOC, DPS, responsible for DPS. But if an assistant is needed, they have a good working relationship between the two of them to assist each other. Some officers are not comfortable with our counselor, so they ask to meet with the DOC counselor who used to work at DPS.
Mhm.
And I gave them the leeway to work with the officers and the employees.
Yeah. So mental health and wellness is really important.
Yes, it is.
For especially frontline.
Yes.
They see things we don't see every day.
Yes.
They see blood, they see violence. And so I don't think that's enough. That's what I would like to see funded for this department, is additional counselors. But thank you for sharing that. In addition to, performance reviews, talking to your officers, we have heard language like the circle, or, being in the inner circle and being treated differently. Can you speak to that?
What?
Favoritism, things like that. How is conflict resolved? How do you take care of that? How do you ensure that everyone in the department feels like?
Councilman, Councilman, I'm sorry. It's really hard to please everybody. I don't know when they say I have a circle. I don't have a driver that drives me around all day. If they say, because sometimes they see me out with a few a specific officer that I go drinking with. I've made it a point that if I get invited by anybody in the department, I show up. It's to the point where I went to 4 Christmas parties in one day. So I don't understand why. And my door's always open. If an officer has an issue, they can come to me and talk to me.
So you have an open door policy?
Yeah, I mean, people.
When's the last time a police officer spoke to you? Like
This mo-
actually took that open door policy seriously? Do you have police officers coming into that's good. Open door policies are good.
They do. I had one that came in this morning.
Okay.
The people that you're referring to, I don't know why they won't approach me. The problem is if I hear that this person has an issue with in the department, sometimes I approach them and they say, "Oh no," they deny it. I don't know why, but like I said, if they talk to me, I talk to them, and I frequently walk around the department.
Okay.
On Fridays, That's why you see me dressed down, because I go around and visit all of our sites on all my substations on Fridays. And at times, sometimes if an accident happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, I show up, not because I don't trust what they're doing, to show them support that I'm there with them. But if they're gonna, if I expect them to be there, then I'm willing to be there as well.
Okay, that's good. My last question would be in regards to, I guess, equipment, supplies. I was in the Paseo and I saw that you have some bikes at the old Coban. Things like that we don't want to waste, right? Do you have plans? What do you do with old equipment, old supplies in the department? How do you ensure that we're not wasting? And on top of that, I understand that investments were made in a building in Marpi at the Hope Center, the Hope Campus. I live right across the way, so I can see it. And DPS is no longer there. Do you plan on resuming operations at the Hope Center, or is that building now just vacant?
Originally, when we moved into Hope Center, it's actually to assist Hope Center as far as security is concerned, when we first came in. There's some issues with confidentiality and all that stuff. So we managed to get the far end of the facility. We did some minor facelift of the building itself. Unfortunately, it's a long way if units have to respond. When we had the opportunity to secure a building in Capitol Hill, we managed to renovate that at a minimal cost using inmates to renovate it and get it up to standard. So that's the reason why we moved them there.
So what happens to the building at the Hope Center?
That went back to the Hope Center.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield.
Recognize Rep. Lizama.
Thank you, Vice Chair and Mr. Chairman there. Welcome, Mr. Commissioner. Back to the uniform or maintenance of the police officers' clothing. The military had, and you've been there, they had this what they call anniversary bonuses when it comes to their second year, third year. Every year they give them so much money to purchase new uniforms. Have you thought about doing that instead of having the person to come in and say, my uniform is in bad shape? Do you have that kind of program?
Actually, it was $15 a month allowance that you get every month in the military, because I received that when I was on active duty. We've tried to address that. That was kind of put on hold, along with the hazardous pay that we've been fighting to get for our officers because of funding issues. So that's why we got to the point where we'll just order uniforms, and if the officer comes in, it's on a one-to-one basis. We had officers that, they get issued uniforms today, they go out on the street, something happens, we have to replace that uniform or their equipment. So yes, we tried to address that. We've tried to address the issue with hazardous pay, night differential. We're still trying to push for that with the limited resource that we have. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. At least you're doing something. Well, yes, you tried to do something.
Yes.
My other question is, do you establish or come up with a program called SOP, Standing Operation Procedures? We have people come in here, did their, hearings, and we asked them. And the answer was, I can't recall. Do you do you authorize them, and do you not tell them to write a daily report activities, and do you safeguard them for future reference?
Okay, are you asking me if I allow them to do SOPs?
No, do you establish SOP?
Okay, SOPs, as Congressman Camacho said, you're a veteran or retiree yourself. SOPs are established for individual units. Every unit within DPS has their own SOP.
Right. And they have that.
Yes, and on top of on the DPS itself as a whole, that's when we work with the regulation established for DPS. So voting will have their own SOP. Rapid response has their own SOP, and so on. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, if you're doing it, your officers have been here before, and we asked that question if they have SOP, and the answer was no. So I hope that you reestablish that, and so that you safeguard those
Yes.
reports. That's what I'm asking for.
All right.
Those vehicles that you receive, or if we say was received from IPI, are they already in the procurement?
The vehicles that you talk about that were donated
I think they were-
by IPI?
Right.
Okay, those were, the minute that they were delivered, was actually donated, it was actually recorded by procurement. They were actually tagged.
Okay.
All of them.
Okay. And then are they on the road?
It's
Or-
been a while. Some of them have already been decommissioned.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I hear back.
I have that answer.
Thank you. Commissioner, I just had a follow-up to something you mentioned. Have you calculated what it would cost the department to provide hazardous pay or night differential?
Yes, we have, Congressman, Mr. Chairman. We've even to the point where night differential, I think is what, 20%? 20%, and hazardous space 25%. We've even played with numbers, bringing that down to bring that down to 50%, see if we can work with it. Even that, we're still trying to work with that.
How would the hazardous pay would be for all officers?
It will be for all the officers that's out. The minute they walk out that door, they're
And then-
basically at risk.
So that's that will be for everyone, but the night differential will be only those working
The
odd
night
hours.
shifts.
Okay.
Yes, there's a particular, this formula that OPM uses for certain hours. And we have to follow the guidelines of the civil service.
Okay. All right. That's something that maybe we can look at. But if you have any other calculations, if you can provide the committee what that would look like for the entire department.
Yes, we can.
For both the hazardous and the night differential. Just one last question I had, and I know I just saw this in the news last month, and so it was probably not included in the budget request, but it was reported that you received 7 canines, 5 for Saipan. I don't think it was reported on your budget submission because it came in after, or I might be wrong, but can you just
It's actually 9 canines. 3 of them will go to customs, 1 will go to Tinian, 1 will go to Rhoda, and 5 will stay on Saipan. Those were funded through customs, the one that funded those dogs actually. So I'm not sure what the funding what account was used for that purpose. It's actually funded by customs, and they're procured by customs and we transferred to DPS.
but in regards to the upkeep and the continuous training and the feeding, how much would that cost the department?
I can get back to you with that. No,
But that will come out of the department. There's no grant that provides for these.
we're working with CJPA as far as identifying not just for that particular case, but even for example, a crime scene where we need to get body bags. So Ms. Zerlin Tamina is actually working with us as far as identifying a grant for that purpose.
But for right now, these dogs are under the care of DPS, and it comes out of your budget.
Yes, the five,
Five.
so actually the 7 dogs, because we still have Tina and Aurora that's still here.
But once you transfer that over, that will be on their expense.
The governor committed to both islands that because those dogs will be assigned to the drug task force, that even the vehicles for those dogs, for Tina and Aurora, both will be provided by us.
Even
So-
the shelter for,
The shelter, I believe Rhoda already has a shelter in
Right.
place. Tina, I think the mayor's office is building one for their canine.
okay. All right, so clarified.
Anyone else for round one? Oh, recognize Rep. Camacho.
One more question. Commissioner, how many of your officers are military veterans?
I have to get back with you on that, Congressman. I don't have the exact numbers.
Okay. So while you're at it, can you please just give me a breakdown of gender, male or female? Yeah,
Okay, I will.
thank you.
Sir.
Anybody else? Okay. Recognize Rep. Selena Babauta.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Chairman. Welcome to the DPS team. I've been listening to your answers to some questions, and I have some of my own. As far as overtime is concerned, since October of 2020, when we were at the height of COVID infections and the subsequent spikes, how much OT was incurred by DPS personnel in dollars, and how much of that was reimbursed by FEMA or COVID funds or federal funds?
Congresswoman, if you allow me, I'll submit that to you. I don't have that information in front of me right now. We have the breakdown on even as far as what's submitted and what's been reimbursed already, but I don't have that ready in front of me.
That was my next question. How much was
Yes.
is pending reimbursement? Do you know that approximately? How much
We
is
would,
pending?
yeah, the system, because it's actually uploaded to the FEMA website, and you'll show us what's spending. The thing with FEMA or the FEMA COVID thing is there's a window. I cannot just say for 2021, here's my submission. They tell us, okay, from January to June, this is the only time you're gonna submit. So that's been a challenge for us. No, that's just an example that I mentioned. That's not the actual timetable. But let me get that information for you, Councilman. I'll forward it to your office.
This committee would appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how many, since you've been submitting personnel costs to FEMA for reimbursement, do you know how much of that was rejected due to unauthorized expenditures? Or have you had any
We
cases?
haven't had any rejected. We've had forms kicked back again because of the window that it was submitted. They just told us to submit at a different window. But us physically, as a disallowable cost, we haven't had issues. Not to this point.
Okay, how many vacancies does DPS currently have?
With the recent resignation, we have about 7 positions open.
Can you tell us where they are? Which divisions or
It's all police division.
police?
We have some that just recently resigned, going to relocate to the U.S. or going to go in the military.
And how much is your total allocation for personnel in terms of positions, FTEs, for the entire department?
Locally only.
Yes, yes. Well, both. I'll ask for the federal later on.
I think the locally I can. We have done the locally. So okay, for police alone is one. You want dollars or numbers?
No, FTEs, numbers.
Oh, 195. I'm
numbers.
sorry. For
195 per police.
Police, for police, and then another about 40 for civilians.
40 civilians in police also.
Yeah. No, 195 for police, sworn, and then 40 for non-sworn. Basic
Okay.
civilian, BMV and all that.
For the entire department. Okay, and how many are federal employees, federally funded employees?
Can I get back to you on that, no, Congressman? Sorry, the breakdown. Some of these officers are funded federally as well.
These 195?
Yes, some of them are.
Okay. Would you mind explaining that? How could they be both funded by?
Like, for example, motor carrier.
Okay,
They allow us to fund some of the officers'
salaries. Okay. Like boating safety.
Boating safety is not funded. The agreement with the boating safety grant is a little bit different
Okay,
because the grant is on a matching on an operational level. But
Okay.
the funding for the person has to come from locally. MaxSAP is different because I think 4 or 5 positions are funded under the grant itself. So as a sex offender, I think 3 or 4 are funded under the sex offenders program.
Okay.
Uh,
Your federally funded employees, aside from things like that, the full salary being federally funded, is it more than 9? It appears to be, right?
yes,
Last
total.
last budget call, I remember distinctly, specifically the number 9 was the number of federally funded.
There's actually
Personnel,
more.
so-
There's actually more than that because of the cops program. The
Okay.
that's annually. So I'd rather if you allow me, give me
Sure.
resubmit that to you in detail.
That's fine. The sooner we get that, the easier it'll be to start deliberating at least on the budget for DPS.
We'll try and get
Um,
that by Tuesday morning. Is that fine?
That's fine. Is that acceptable, Mr. Chairman? How many were hired since October of last year, or actually since ARPA funds were given to your department? How many were hired under ARPA funds, fully funded by ARPA?
According to my HR, about 13 personnel, Congresswoman.
113?
13.
Oh, sorry.
It would be nice if
Jesus.
113.
Okay. How many revolving funds again? Revolving accounts are there for DPS again? I'm sorry.
If you don't mind, I have Director
Sure.
answer that.
There's quite a few. We have the non-essential services. That's the 3560. We have motor vehicle. The student the student class or driver's license fees. Vehicle insurance accounts. They're all different accounts.
Okay.
We have the guard services, which is, I don't know why it's an M account, but we have that. That's the one with the most. We have the firearm safety class. We have the range account. There are we have the impound lot account. There are a lot of different
Okay.
revolving accounts.
Can you submit a list of those and their balances? And what do you typically use these revolving accounts for? What types of expenses do you?
So let's say the impound account.
Yeah.
If you know the impound lot needs aggregate, or we pay for their porta potty, or you know anything they need, we take it out of that, and that's actually a minimal amount coming in for the impound lot. Then we have the firearm safety class. We use it to purchase target sheets, or
Okay. Got it.
like booklets to give out to
Sure.
students, or students taking the firearm safety class, or if there's a lot of money in there, we use it to purchase ammunition, or send firearms instructors, and it's only dependent on how much is in there.
Sure. For the list of revolving accounts, can you, when you do submit it to this committee, can you identify what the funding source is or sources are?
Yeah.
Part of the duty of this committee is to deliberate on the efficiencies and the economy of resources that we try to allocate for departments here in the CNMI. And that's the reason why we do a budget call every year to different departments and the municipalities. And in order to do that, we need accurate information from the departments. It doesn't help the department if we do not get accurate information. And so I would like to ask, let's say, if we were to decrease the operations of the well, it's at 0 right now. I don't know how we can decrease it anymore, but we're waiting for the July 1st submission or supplemental submission. But if there were allotted, and if in that submission there would be some funds allotted for the operations of DPS, what are the top three, let's say, to help DPS become more efficient? What would be the 3 things that you could probably live without? DPS could live without.
It's that's a kind of hard question to answer is because we're basically living on the minimum that we're running off right now, the needs. Basically just critical stuff are the fuel, communications, because utilities are paid on a separate account, I believe, outside the department. Those are the 2 key. Real ID. Real ID costs about 60,000 a quarter, as far as fees are concerned, that we have to pay to an entity in the mainland that so we can maintain connectivity with U.S. Homeland Security. We're still trying to get ways to amend our regulation and to raise the fee for the real ID. That's a $240,000 a year that we have to pay for that. And luckily, Secretary of Finance through OIT is doing the contract for that rather than us. Hopefully it stays that way, so we don't have to worry about that cost.
Last question, Mr. Chairman. How often does DPS Saipan communicate with the municipalities? DPS Tinian and Rhoda, we just came from Tinian and Rhoda doing their budget hearings for each department, and Governor also zeroed out their operations. So they come to us pleading that they only have 1 car or 2 cars. I'm not talking about DPS in particular. But for example, like in Tinian, they informed us that they were going to get 1 K9, but it was up to them to sustain this program, this K9 program. So how often does DPS Saipan assist their extended offices in the municipalities? Because they plead with us every year, for things like fuel. They ask for meager $10,000 a year in fuel for, let's say, for example, for DPS, but DPS Saipan incurs over 60,000, or at least 60,000, 50 to 60,000 dollars worth of fuel. And I get it, Saipan is bigger, we have a larger population to deal with than the municipalities, but there's a great disparity and inequity between the municipalities of Saipan, Tinian, and Rhoda. So I'm wondering, how can we also assist Tinian and Rhoda meet their needs? And I'm hoping that you guys can communicate that internally so we don't have to do it on the financial side.
Congressman, we do communicate. I do communicate periodically with both RDs, resident directors. We give them what we have. So basically, when we order uniforms for our officers, we include Tinian and Rhoda. If they come over saying they need this, if we have it within our logistics system, we give it to them. Unfortunately, fuel is the one thing that I cannot provide for them, and I've told them that. Any cars, we just purchased a vehicle for Rhoda and Tinian for boating. Unfortunately, the crane was down on Rhoda, so it's still sitting here. Hopefully, we're going to ship it out anytime, any day now when they tell us the ship is available. So we try to accommodate them as much as we can. As long as they already communicates with us, we give them what we have.
Okay,
And the K9, the correction with the K9, as I mentioned earlier, the K9 will actually come out of us here because that's the governor's program as far as for the drug task force, as far as cost for maintenance.
you guys will fund that?
Yes.
We
Somebody-
just heard from DPS Tinian. They said they were informed that they would have to,
there was an issue with Tinian because in the beginning they didn't want the dogs. They when the team actually went down to Rhoda, did a diagnostic test with all the handlers to select the handlers. They went to Tinian, they said they don't want the dogs. Then down the line they said they want the dogs again. So I think there's a miscommunication within them, but I can reiterate to the RD with that. We actually spoke to the mayor with that as well. And I told the mayor myself about that issue, about the plan for that. And it's actually the K9 were actually specifically purchased to address the drug task force needs on both all three islands. And with that said, that includes the cost for them. That's why we're purchasing a vehicle for the K9 as well.
yes, they did mention the
Yeah.
dog came with a car, even though
Yes.
the dog can't drive it, but yeah, it came with a car, a truck specifically. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Just clarification on the real ID. You said it will cost $240 a year. How much in fees on average, does the department collect every quarter? I know it's being funded now through finance, but later on down the line.
I don't have the accurate figure, but that goes actually into the general fund. None of that funds for the fees for the license. The only thing we collect that goes to revolving account is the penalty fee, which is about 50,000 since this fiscal year started. So I can get that information for you, Congressman.
So the real ID fees go into the general fund, but the department would have to be responsible for the
Yes, sir.
$240,000.
Yes. Right now, the Secretary of Finance has assumed responsibility of it and cutting contract for the real ID program. But we do need to adjust the cost of the real ID.
Is that, and we'll look it up, but is that done? Is the fee set through statute or is this a policy call?
Yes, it's statutorily set.
Okay. All right. So clarified.
Okay, I just have a few questions, follow-up questions. So the indirect or administrative cost, you said 100% of that goes back to grants, correct? Does DPS use any of your personnel to provide the services associated with the indirect cost?
All of our grants that we apply for are applied by our program managers. Every program basically has a program manager, and they actually submit the grants themselves to the grantor.
So none of your personnel assist in any
No.
way? Okay.
No, we don't.
Okay. In your budget submission, you requested 7 additional FTEs from 185 to 192. What would those positions be?
Yes, those are for the police officers that are currently on the ARPA account. We're trying to get them into the local account, but we're told that ARPA will cover it. So
Okay. Under overtime, the actual shows that the department spent $2 million in fiscal year 2021, and in fiscal year 2023, you are only requesting $200K. Are you not? There's a significant decrease from 2 million to $200K.
I believe because we're actually reliant on the COVID reimbursement as far as overtime is concerned. I'm assuming that's the reason why they did this as well. I didn't have the opportunity to talk to them. Why did they reduce?
Okay. So going back to pre-COVID, what was your average overtime expense?
I think we've managed to go from 2 million down. We've managed to cut it down to 800,000, and I can't, don't quote me on that. Let me get back to you on that. I just thinking off the top of my head that we managed to cut down costs within a year period to that amount.
So pre-COVID, you were spending about 800K in overtime?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But you anticipate okay, so you're requesting 200K because you are anticipating that a lot of the overtime will be covered by the COVID reimbursements.
I'm assuming that that's why they cut it down to 200,000. I don't know why the OMB is the one that cut it down. Well, I'm sorry, I'm sorry that I was just been told it's zero. Yeah. Okay, yeah, because it's actually we're relying on COVID for the regular overtime. 200,000 is actually for non-COVID related, i.e. investigators have to go to Tinian and Rhoda, do investigation, and that's the reason.
Okay. I'm just curious, did you participate or assisted in preparing this budget by any chance?
Normally what I do is I give them to Director the three, and they actually go through it, and then we sit down and discuss it.
Okay. So you do have some input in the preparation of your budget
Yes.
submission. Okay. And also under repairs and maintenance, you're asking for 100K, but with the additional purchases, purchase of 75 vehicles, what would that, how would that affect your repairs and maintenance expense now? Because that's a lot of cars.
Yes, it is. And I guess one of the plans is to we lean a lot on our revolving accounts, and if need be, again, I will lean on the administration to assist us on the maintenance of these vehicles. It's going to be a little bit minimal now compared to the previous ones because the others had incurred a lot of miles on them.
Okay. And can we just go back to when we were in Tinian, it was shared with us that I believe it was DPS who gave them a boat. However, it was completely stripped off when it was given to them, and like I just don't understand. I guess help me understand the logic behind that. And I guess they were told that if you wanted to use it, that you would have to find the funds to purchase.
Okay, so the history, same as Rhoda, they're in the same boat. We purchased a boat for Tinian and Rhoda both. So we went from a 21-footer to a 27-footer. The engines that were procured with the previous boat were actually just a year old. So we could not justify purchasing new engines for those boats. But the boats we ordered were actually can be powered by those engines. So everything for that on that boat was federal property, had to be transferred to the current boats. We actually had every intention of surveying the boat. And if I'm not mistaken, DLNR one that brought that issue up that they were given the boat because they actually requested us to keep the engine and thought we couldn't. The grantor wouldn't allow us. So that's the reason why he was stripped down to rubber and tin only.
Okay.
I hope it
Thank
makes
you
sense.
Thank you for the clarification. And one last question: are there any FTEs under MOAs right now with DPS?
FTEs on the MOE?
MOUs.
MOUs?
Do you have
No.
any FTEs under MOUs?
Not here in Saipan.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's it for me. Anybody else has any questions? Follow-up questions? Recognize Rep. Tina Sablan.
Thank you, Vice. Commissioner, you mentioned that taking care of your officers is a priority, and I think we all agree with that. But besides the uniforms that Rep. Probst was asking about, we also understand that some officers have even had to buy their own ballistic vests, and that the ballistic vests and shields procured by the department aren't quite up to standard. Does your fiscal year 2023 budget include vests that will meet standards?
First, the ballistic vest that was procured for the frontline officers are ballistic vests that are being used across the nation.
They protect all sides.
They don't protect all sides. What you're referring to is what RRT carries, which is protects everything, including your arm. A tactical vest. Those are for specialized units. Those are level 4 vest. For frontline, it's only a level 3, and that's what we've issued to them with the soft plates. And again, I cannot satisfy everybody with what they want.
Mhm.
We bought one set of vests across the board for everybody. I didn't buy a vest particularly just for this person or that person.
So your specialized units will have those specialized vests?
They have specialized vests,
Okay.
And simply because they will encounter high-powered rifles.
Mhm.
Unlike the front line, which is close encounter, which is handguns,
Mhm.
and those vests have been tested for that purpose.
I see. Okay. So going back to the question, does your proposal for equipment or supplies, wherever that will fall in that category, does that include procuring more vests or no?
No, it doesn't, for the most part, but certain grants will allow, certain programs will allow their officers to be funded for that purpose.
Okay. And then what about your report management system? We understand that it's down. What is the status of that?
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, the RMS is back online already.
As of when?
Yeah, but I stand corrected. Let me verify that if it's up online, but I know there's a contract being done because we had to rebuild the whole system
Mhm.
because in the last power surge, it actually fried the brain of it. I guess I can't remember the name of it that they use,
Mhm.
but that's in the midst of getting online. I can get
Okay.
more details on it and get back to
Okay.
you on that.
And when did that power surge happen? So like, but how long was it
This was
down?
like couple months ago.
Okay.
But it takes a while and that's critical because even the readouts come out of that.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So you don't know yet if you're able to track reports at this point.
We do, but I think it's through the word system. Yeah. Through this Microsoft Word program that they've programmed for that purpose.
Okay, but
Let
that's
me
not
get more details
sufficient,
and then-
right? Yeah.
It does, but we're trying to make it more user friendly for
Mhm.
the officers, and supervisors can actually monitor it as well.
Okay. So is that a system that requires regular maintenance?
Yeah. The new system.
The report management, the
Well, it
RMS?
will, and that's done by our IT
Mhm.
internally.
Okay, so that is part of your budget as well.
Yes. As far as the IT,
As far as RMS maintenance.
well, on the general, it's basically general maintenance for DPS.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And then my next question, so we're just looking at the trends in the department's expenditures over the last couple of years, and in fiscal year 2021, so this is according to the reports we got from the Secretary of Finance, the Commissioner's Office was allotted $137,000 for the whole year and actually spent $2.4 million, so more than 17 and a half times what was allotted for the year. The rest of the department was allotted $5.6 million and actually spent $12.5, so more than double the allotment. And then even as of the second quarter for this year, your expenditures have already exceeded appropriations by over $860,000. So just going back to what Rep. Babalta was saying earlier about chaos, Commissioner, how can you or how can we plan appropriately for the fiscal year if the budget that we're getting is not realistic? It's not even close to realistic. And if the department is consistently spending beyond appropriations, we are aware that the governor will be submitting a revised budget on July 1st. And I just want to ask that you not just accept whatever he proposes and really actively advocate for a true and realistic budget for your department. Because we also want to support DPS and we want to support and meet the public safety needs of this community. And it really starts with the budget. So will you do that?
I will look into what they've submitted on that, Congresswoman.
Thank you. And then just a couple more questions. The last time we had you in this chamber, we had a question about the department's relationship with federal partners. And you did mention that you had signed a number of MOUs with federal agencies, but that there was a conflict with the FBI that was holding up an MOU with that agency. Can you just refresh our memories? What was the nature of that conflict, and has it been resolved?
The problem with it is actually, okay, the usage of the range is actually a fee for every agency. It's $1,500. Every agency pays for that, including CBP. Even CBP is pushing us to make it higher because everybody should be paying higher. So the FBI comes in and says, gives me an MOU, but in lieu of payment, they're going to offset it with service, meaning the lab.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, we pay for the lab separately.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, no, you guys need to pay the $1,500. He came back and says, how about we give you ammunition for the amount of $1,500? We'll do the MOU. I said, okay, that's fine with me,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to document it. He came back to me and told me it wasn't going to happen. So I said, if that's the case, it's not going to happen with us either.
And this is $1,500, like a one-time fee, or $1,500
It's an annual fee.
annual per person? Is that
No, per agency.
just per agency?
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's
Okay.
that's the conflict.
And so it still hasn't been resolved?
They've never came back.
Over $1,500?
They never came back for it.
Okay. And so as a result, then, do we not have access to the crime lab?
We do. We pay for the crime lab.
That's a separate agreement.
Yes, we pay. Every state pays for the crime lab whenever you send stuff off.
Okay.
Even for fingerprinting, we pay for that as well.
Okay. And so we have seen, unfortunately, in recent months, a number of homicides as well as sexual assaults. Have you enlisted the assistance of the FBI to get evidence analyzed at the crime lab?
Yes, we have.
You have?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's why some cases take a long time, because we have to wait for that to come back.
Right.
And it takes a while if it goes to their lab in DC.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. And finally, my last question is, it's a difficult subject to ask about, Commissioner, but I do think it's important to ask. We are aware of complaints or allegations of sexual harassment within the department, and even at least one complaint that was filed against you a couple of years ago. And so the impression that we get is that these complaints don't go anywhere, and maybe they get dropped, maybe they get swept under the rug, who knows? We never know. But it raises questions about DPS's process for handling sexual harassment complaints, particularly when leadership is involved. So could you clarify for us, is there a sexual harassment policy for the department, and how are complaints handled?
I believe the sexual harassment policies, we endorse the civil services policy. As far as me in particular, and you can research this, check with the AG's office, they looked into it. Check with OPA, they looked into it. So I guess my answer to that is maybe you should ask them directly instead of hearing it from me as far as DPS, because any criminal activities that may involve an officer, or most especially senior, the AGIU looks into the matter.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope I answered your question.
Okay. Yes, it does. But I think that for the more general question, like about the process. So if an employee files a complaint, who do they file the complaint to, and then where does it go from there? They take it directly to the AG's office? Is that how that works?
If it's a criminal complaint, it comes to us.
Mm-hmm.
If our criminal investigation sees that it's borderline conflict on our part, then we refer to the AGIU to look into, or to the chief prosecutor, and he's the one that decides. We'll go and investigate it, or you guys can handle it.
I see. But if it's not, like, if it's an employee,
Now, if
an
it's,
HR issue,
then we refer
do
to
they go
OPM.
to the H? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. And we've had, there's a case that came about, one of the male, it wasn't a sexual harassment complaint, it was a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
OPM came into the picture and started investigating.
Okay.
And our door's always open. We never said, no, you're not going to come in and talk to this officer, talk to this person.
Okay, so OPM can come in and
Yes.
investigate. Well, that's good to know. And then finally, on just along this line, what about training? Do you get training, or do your officers get training on sexual harassment policies
Yes,
and the grievance process?
Yes, again, we work with OPM regarding that.
Okay. When was the last time there was a training?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but according to HR and director, it was a couple months ago.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And are you tracking the complaints or grievances that are filed, whether it's sexual harassment or some other type of employment grievance?
Yes, I get briefed basically if anything comes up. If it's an internal thing within DPS involving an officer or an employee, I refer to internal affairs. And if it's borderline criminal, again, it's just referred to the investigation unit. And then from there, the process will kick in if it's we're gonna handle it or in consultation with the chief prosecutor at the AG's office.
Okay. Thank you. I yield.
The question I have is just to assist the department in trying to get the funds needed. I'm looking at the operator's license fees. The $50, is that for the local driver's license or real ID or both?
Both. We haven't actually implemented the real ID fee yet because again, we need to work with the AG as far as amending our regulation, and unfortunately, we don't have a legal counsel. And also, as you mentioned, we need to work with us as far as legislation wise.
Yeah, because one of the sections states that BMV is authorized to promulgate rules and regulations as necessary to implement and comply with the real ID. It doesn't say anything about fees, but there is a section that says $50 shall be paid for each operator's license issued. So the current fees that they're charging for real ID, is that based on this $50 statute, or
Yes, it is.
is that how much is being charged now?
$50, yes.
And so if we were to work on this, and if we were to charge, I guess, what's the maximum amount DPS would charge an operator for a real ID?
Other states charge, my understanding was other states charge about $100. With our little
Population.
collection or numbers and license here, I don't even believe that's going to be enough to subsidize the $240,000 that has to be paid annually. Although we're also trying to work with, I think SOF was saying trying to have his OIT office work on identifying grants to assist in funding the cost.
Yeah, because I was just looking, this is a requirement that has to be implemented by next year, right? May 2023.
I believe that's been moved so many times, Congressman. I think the latest May I think of 2023 is the latest one.
Yeah.
But it's been extended so many times already.
Okay.
But so far, we're in full compliance with the Real ID program.
So even with the $100, it wouldn't be enough to pay for the cost of.
Not with our population. Keep in mind that the Real ID, it's a 5-year driver's license. It's not a 3-year. We don't set the limit as far as how many years.
Okay, so it's just $240 for all 3 islands, all 3
Yes.
machines, and all. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted clarification so that we can try to see how we can also amend that law in order to help DPS fund that division.
Yes, sir.
We'll take maybe 2 more so we can wrap up, and I know there are several reports that the commissioner and his team will provide the committee come Tuesday. So if there's any other members for the last 2 rounds, 1 round, I recognize Rep. McNamara.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome. I just have one question. I don't know if it's 1 or 3, but with the recent missing person case, and I've known of, I think, 3 other missing people have they been found? And if not, how can this division be improved, or this department?
Um,
Are police officers involved in searching?
They were in the first couple of days. If it's okay with you, I'd rather brief you that on a side note. I don't want to. There's a lot of sensitive information in that as the case is still open. If that's okay with you, Congresswoman.
Okay. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
And my last question is probably not budget related, but since you're here, I would like to take the opportunity and ask, can you share with us what the standard operating procedure or the protocol for operators or dispatchers when a 911 call is made?
You want me to go walk you through what dispatchers do when a 911 call comes
Right.
in?
So maybe start with like how many rings before they pick up the phone.
Normally, they're supposed to answer on the first ring. Sadly, our 911 system, which actually will be transferred to Homeland at a later time, we're just holding on the fort for them. And our dispatchers are police dispatchers and emergency medical dispatchers, basically for fire. So the plan was to have fire man the dispatch, simply because they have medical experience. A lot of 911, we had an instance where a baby was choking and the dispatcher actually taught the mom how to clear airways. Well, with that said, our phone, the 911 system that we have per se, is a three rotary phone lines that actually jump from one to another. So and there are times when the one phone will go down, but that number will still be ringing, and that's why sometimes you don't get answered at all. And we've addressed that with ITNE on numerous occasions.
Are there any plans to train the operators with regards? I hear you saying that a lot of times they would transfer the call to a different department because they're more trained or informed on how to walk through, the situations and stuff. But are there any plans in the future to train your actual operators when they pick up the call?
The the medical dispatchers are with our dispatchers.
Oh, okay.
They're in one room.
Okay.
But in the long run, I don't know when that's going to be implemented between Homeland and Fire. Is the medical side will actually be separated, and they'll be actually the actual 911.
Okay.
So right now we're getting it, and we call Fire in the past. So it'll be reversed, and they'll be calling us for any call that comes in.
Okay. Are you aware of any instances where a caller made a call in and was told to hold?
No, but I would like to know if you have, if that
I have
occurs.
personally experienced that. I was at a location where I witnessed some stuff going on where this guy was beating up this other guy.
Mhm.
And when I called 911 because I saw this guy pulled out a machete out of his vehicle. And when I called 911, I was told to hold. And so I was so afraid because the guy looked at me with his machete and I thought he was going to come for me. And so I just, that's a concern because normally when people call 911, it is of an emergency. And, I'm just so grateful that this person didn't come after me with his machete and harm me. So can we just make sure we look into that and
Yes, I will.
just do better?
I will.
Okay.
I will talk to the commander further.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Vice Chair. At this time, we just want to express our appreciation to you, Commissioner, and to your team for coming in today. Again, as I stated earlier, there are several requests that we will await for your team to prepare by Tuesday in order to assist the committee in trying to address some of the requests that DPS has made despite not getting any operational funding. But, you know, in order for us to also assist the department in trying to get those fundings in the needed areas. And so at this time, Commissioner, again, we'll excuse you and your team and await those reports.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Members.
Thank you. Members, with that and with the presence of the DPS Commissioner, we will forego item 5, item 6, and proceed to miscellaneous. Any members? The next committee meeting we have is on Monday. It's for the OPA bill. CPA or invitations were sent to OPA, CPA, and Secretary of Finance. From my understanding, they had a meeting, all three of those agencies, and I didn't get confirmation the Secretary will be here, but I did get a confirmation from one of the CPA's board member as well as Public Auditor Peter that they'll be here to provide oral testimonies. I also understand that they will meet with FAA officials on Tuesday, and so should anything change from Monday's meeting, we'll address that. If nothing has changed, then we can proceed. But I will try to reach out to Secretary of Finance to see if he'll be in Monday. But for now, it's meeting is still scheduled for Monday at 1:30. Yeah, Rep. Sablan.
Thank you. And on that note, would it be possible to arrange a meeting with FAA as well? Even just a phone call or Zoom conference? When I spoke to Mr. Gordon Wong, he was more than willing to talk to us to answer our questions about, whatever FAA's grant assurance requirements and their concerns about potential violations might be. And I think he was expecting to hear from us this week. And it's also my understanding that there actually is another FAA official from headquarters that's here. And I think the CPA board had offered to facilitate a meeting with that person as well.
Maybe on Monday we can find out if we'll have quorum for Tuesday or Wednesday. And then if we do have for Tuesday, maybe a few members can also join in on that meeting on Tuesday with the 3 stakeholders as well as FAA. Again, that's hoping that we get quorum on Tuesday. I'll do a survey to see who will be here and if anyone would be interested in joining the FAA, and they can share what the result of the meeting is with the members. I know our schedule is full through Thursday, and I believe they're heading out Friday, but we'll get more clarification on Monday. And so if that'll work, members who wants to sit in on that meeting can sit in. All right. Any other member? Recognize Rep. Lozama.
Just a quick announcement. Monday, we're trying to bring Gary in. We already sent out a memorandum to him, and it's at 10:30 in the morning. This time, if he doesn't show up, we're going to do the same thing like we did to Commissioner, who is this? Guerrero, my cousin, I forgot his name. Anyway, Monday, please, 10:30. And I appreciate it if you're here. I think you will. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? No, I was just kidding. Okay, with that, members, thank you. We'll see you Monday at 10:30, Rep. Lozama? 10:30 and 1:30 on Monday. Can I get a motion for adjournment? All right, motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. This meeting is hereby adjourned at 4:27 p.m.